Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Our experts are excited to dive into defining connected planning and exploring how it extends beyond traditional finance with practical applications for capital, marketing, and IT.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the final installment in a series hosted by Alithia on connected planning. In prior segments, we learned the definition of connected planning and how to facilitate connected planning use cases beyond traditional finance. We also heard two of our three practical applications for connected planning, one focused on capital portfolio management, the other focused on marketing planning. If you get the opportunity to, I'd suggest you go back and listen to the other recordings in our series of webinars. In our final use case, we're going to focus on connected planning for information technology, which in many organizations is the second largest contributor of spend outside of labor. Traditionally, within IT organizations, there's a class of IT management called IT financial management that is sponsored by the Chief Information Officer. IT financial management is a line of business, is a business process focused on planning, budgeting, and forecasting for IT, reporting, and more often than not, as IT has become shared service centers, costing and chargebacks. It's typically owned by the IT finance team with dual reporting structures to satisfy both internal IT operational reporting needs vis-a-vis the CIO, in addition to needing to feed into enterprise reporting hosted by corporate FP&A. The premise behind IT financial management and some of the key pillars include topics such as being able to run IT like a standalone business and being able to ensure that IT spend can be tracked, measured, and compared for both day-to-day BAU operations that we consider run the business, as well as innovation and investment to help grow and transform the business. Other capabilities include being able to provide and show the value of IT to internal business partners and customers, sometimes called a bill of IT. And then finally, to ensure that planning, execution, and purchasing can come together into a holistic process to ensure that commitments are adhered to and the controls are in place. As alluded to previously, one of the key aspects that we're seeing with many of our customers with respect to IT financial management is that CIOs should run their organization like a standalone business. Some of the goals include ensuring that there's greater transparency to IT service charges so that internal customers can see the value of IT, making sure that IT projects are always aligned with strategic business priorities, ensuring that IT spend analysis can help get that breakdown between run and grow and transform, and to build a culture that enhances IT credibility within the business. The three primary components that comprise IT financial management include IT planning and analysis, which includes budgeting and forecasting, IT chargebacks and a bill of IT, and then the master data, metadata management, and automation that support it. From an Alithia standpoint, we view IT financial management as a critical component of a true connected planning process. Some of the key stakeholders in IT financial management include the CIO, who needs to explain the business investments in IT and the value delivered, the VP of applications, who needs to understand the application total cost of ownership to help perform application rationalization and cost optimization, and ultimately get to a cost per supported user. And then the VP of Infrastructure of Operations, who needs to explain how infrastructure is not only used by internally custom-built applications and processes, but also to support third-party business processes at the end of the day. Providing the link to these three key leaders in IT and the enterprise is the IT finance manager, who not only needs to satisfy the internal reporting needs of IT leadership, but also provide the input capabilities and transparency to the rest of the business and corporate finance of IT spend and its value, including IT cost transparency and ultimately getting to more of a consumption-based model for analysis. If I create a spotlight on one of the first pillars of IT financial management, specifically IT planning and forecasting, for most of our customers, this typically takes forth in four discrete phases. The first is what we consider IT target setting. This is typically established by corporate finance in conjunction with the business, where based on targeted metrics, both targets for IT run and IT investment can be defined in accordance with strategic priorities. The goals are to make sure that BAU targets are aligned with revenue and make sense, and that initiatives can be linked to strategic planning. Alithya has invested in additional connected planning solutions, such as capital portfolio planning, which you can actually see elsewhere in the series, that talks a little bit more about the capital request process to create those initial pools of money before getting into the detailed planning and forecasting. The second component for us is what we consider the IT resource plan and forecast. This is really focusing on both the labor, which would include employees and contractors, and non-labor, which would include equipment and software, whether it be virtual or not, within the framework of their planning tool. These solutions typically integrate with the human capital management and fixed asset systems and provide visibility into what we consider the IT supply plan. The next component is what we consider the IT project plan and forecast. This is where what we can think of as the demand plan, specifically as the next level down for initiatives tied to strategic planning, can be executed. This includes budgeting and ROI for new programs and projects, forecasting for indirect and capital projects, and this typically integrates with PPM solutions. One of the key things that we ensure that our customers work to is having a uniform view of their master data. So the high-level resource categories defined in the demand view for financial planning and forecasting can be mapped to with the more detailed bottoms-up view for resource planning around labor and non-labor on the supply side. And then finally, the last component is the monitoring analysis, being able to create self-service reporting and ad hoc analysis. So this next level down IT resource and project view can group by and sum into the ultimate financial plans that are fed throughout the enterprise. The other pillar of IT financial management, once these IT supply and demand plans are created that create the spend perspective, is to establish the link into the beneficiary perspective. Again, for IT to run itself as a standalone business, they need to demonstrate their value to their internal business partners. And so supporting that is what we call the IT chargebacks and bill of IT. And that feeds into a solution within the Oracle EPM platform called IT costing and chargebacks. IT costing and chargebacks typically includes three discrete views. The first is the modeling of financials and projects, which typically includes incorporating data from multiple sources, such as the general ledger and the financial planning tool, typically a project subledger. And then depending on what's required, you can obviously also include time entry hours by project and vendor detail from an AP and GL. IT is typically the one area where exposing vendor information alongside initiatives becomes critical because of the economies of scale that can be generated with that spend. Separately from that process, you can then perform cost center allocations. Most IT organizations are structured into direct and indirect responsibility centers, where the indirect responsibility centers can include things such as architecture and governance, security, CIO, PMO. Additionally, given the nature of IT, there may be internal charges between various IT functions. For example, you may see that the VP of application infrastructure is providing both services to other areas of IT in addition to the business itself. And then finally, depending on the investments that are made, being able to support what we consider project allocations, including capitalization of labor to projects. The next step in this process is typically the costing of IT operations. This is being able to assign cost to the resource level. So we consider labor costing by class, skill, person, depending on the level of granularity required, asset costing by class, type of equipment, and then with those fully burdened costs in place, taking it to either an application or service view so that the fully burdened projects, employees, and resources can be incorporated into what the consumer ultimately sees. And then finally, the last component is really IT as a business service provider. This is for run-based activities, modeling out what we consider a service catalog. And in that service catalog, having the flexibility to even to pass true cost in, or to get into a model where you're doing more P times Q rates and calculations, in which case then the variances associated between the cost and the chargeback are encapsulated and allocated out in a separate process. And so when we talk about showbacks and chargebacks, this is the variability and flexibility that customers require to support both management reporting as well as what's needed for legal purposes, particularly in global organizations where markups and transfer pricing can become a part of it as well. So in the big picture, one of the important benefits of the Oracle EPM Cloud Platform is the flexibility and deployment options. Many of our customers like to take a crawl, walk, run approach, particularly as one thinks about moving from what we call the financial view to the operational view to the consumer view. We have greater levels of complexity, predominantly tied to the levels of grain and the levels of detail and the myriad of data sources that are involved. So as an example, a typical customer that we may start with might be doing something as basic as looking at accounts and entities, which we might think of as cost centers, and doing simple allocations to their consumers. A more refined customer might start trying to take advantage of project structures, whether it be for recurring spend, which is really not projects, but just a convenience, or true project spend to link to consumers. And so when we look at the premise of moving connected planning to the next phase beyond finance, it's really about moving somebody from the bronze and silver level down to gold, platinum, and diamond. Because it is at those levels that we start creating the additional views within the platform that we call operation, that is targeted towards IT leadership itself. And so once that view is enabled, truly connected planning has been achieved, because I can now create a holistic solution that models from top bottom to bottom top, that includes the financial view for the enterprise, the operational view for IT, and the consumer view for the business to see the value and the benefits received by IT. Couple samples of output. Again, dashboards that are showing the composition of both IT services and applications for different types of applications and resources. But honestly, particularly enabled by the gold view, the view that most of our consumers are very interested in is what we call the bill of IT. In this particular example, we're looking at a charge that the UK sales consumer or entity has received from IT. And rather than seeing one large number for $235,000 US, they're seeing the breakdown of that number that includes the service driver, the quantity, the unit cost, and the charge at the end of the day. And so from a transparency perspective, the consumer has got better visibility into what are they getting for the lump charge they might have historically received in the prior state. On behalf of Alithya, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us through this webinar series. If you haven't done so, I'd encourage you to go back and look at some of the other sessions. And if you'd like to learn more, you can contact us at infosolutions@alithya.com. Thanks very much and have a great day.
Thank you all for tuning in today. If you have any further questions or would like to continue the conversation, head over to our website at alithya.com to contact us and check out our other webinars and events.